This is The Search for the Sound. I'm Ross Holmes.
My name is Jason Anick.
And today we're joined by master of many string instruments and musical genres, Beth Bahia Cohen. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you both.
I'm blown away sitting here looking at your screen and seeing all these instruments in the back. My mind's racing with so many questions about what's this and that. But I suppose before we launch into your story and your instruments, let's listen to a special presentation.
Well, that sounds absolutely fantastic. It's always a pleasure to hear you. Of course, I always love when I get to hear you at Berkeley, and you really just are opening so many musical worlds to so many people, and it's fantastic to hear it. So, tell us about this instrument because I'm sure a lot of people have never seen one like this.
Oh, the Yaile tambour?
Yeah.
Yes.
There it is.
It's from it's from Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to get the whole thing in the screen. If I go like this, look at this.
It's unbelievable.
Amazing.
It's crazy. And actually, honestly, it comes from based on another instrument from Turkey called a tanbur, Tanbur, that's plucked. And it's similar, but I think the neck is thinner, it's lighter, has a different top. This top is skin, even though, it could be a drum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Like a banjo.
Yeah. By the way, yes, this is called the Jumbush Yaile tambur. That's the style of it. It's shaped like a jumbush. That's another instrument that's plucked from Turkey. It's made out of aluminum. And it's got a short neck, wider, no frets. So it's like an oud. It's like an oud, no frets. Pluck it. It sounds very metallic. And they started making Yaile tamburs aluminum that look very much like that, banjo-like thing. And then with longer necks. And there's a whole evolution of this instrument. This is just wood and the skin. And it has... On my instrument, I have 7 strings. 2 of them, that's 2 strings in the same groove, that I'll bow on. Okay, so the bridge is raised. I don't know if you could see that, but it's a little, I don't want to hit anything behind it.
Yeah.
It's raised so I can bow. And these 5 strings on the side are sympathetic strings.
Ah, so that's what gives it that built-in reverb.
Totally natural reverb.
It sounds like a full concert hall. It's really great. I love that sound.
Yeah, and it's very soulful. It's a beautiful instrument, beautiful, and the music is beautiful too. So I'll just play the beginning of a Neveser Peshref for you. Wait.
hits
tone,
you.
but
It hits you right here.
doesn't it? It gets right in
Mm, it
here.
really
Yeah.
does.
It has such an
Yeah.
ancient sound to it. It just it sounds like time. It sounds like uh, the world, like the depth of the world or something. It's unbelievable, especially
Nice.
with the sympathetic strings and that resonance. That I'm sure the experience would be totally different if it was dry sounding versus all that reverb.
And there are instruments like this. You can play that same piece on the cello, and people have, but it doesn't have that. Yeah,
Are
it
you
doesn't have
using
the
a cello
resonance.
bow?
I am.
Hmm.
I am using a cello. I've tried a lot of different bows. I have other bows I use as well, but this is where I started, and this is I like it a lot. Cello bow. I was going to say something else. I can't remember. I'm
Oh,
sorry. Oh yes,
and where is that instrument from again?
Turkey.
Yeah, from Turkey. Okay.
Check out the back. This was made by Mustafa Gencer, a beautiful maker of tambours.
Hmm.
Both yaylı. Yay means bow in Turkish. Li is with. So tambour with bow. But there's also misrable tambours which are plucked with a misrable. So look at this. If you open it,
Oh,
you
you can
can.
open
It's like a
it.
little trap door. But what you see, I don't know if you can see it though, is a sound post, which is really. Oh, it's back. It's back here.
Ah, so okay,
You
it
see
does
it
have a
there?
sound post. Yeah.
So good.
It doesn't work without one. And the first one I got, the aluminum one, they don't have sound posts in them. And then a teacher of mine said he was visiting Boston. He said, let's cut out a circle in the back and put in a sound post because you need a sound post. And it made all the difference in the world. It focused the sound, made it louder. Otherwise, it was all over the place and it just didn't sound good at all. So it needs a sound post.
That's
That's
amazing. Yeah,
wild.
I mean, when you think about violins, if you've ever played one without a sound post, yeah, the sound is just everywhere. It's wonky and it's very interesting, but it's hard to really control the tune. And it's amazing with that one little tiny piece of wood.
I know, a little piece of wood. Exactly. That's why you should never change your strings all at once or take the bridge off because the sound post can fall and then you have to bring it somewhere.
Yes, little subtle movement of the post is makes huge difference in the sound for sure.
Exactly.
Tell us about your very first instrument. You play so many. Was violin, fiddle your very first instrument that you started playing?
Actually, it was the recorder. At the age of 6, my parents thought, why, we want her to play the violin, they said, but start with something easier. And I played the recorder, soprano recorder at 6. And at 7, I started on the violin. But honestly, it wasn't my choice. And it took me all the way going through high school and then leaving home to go to college and to basically be on my own in my life that I said, I'm not going to play anymore. It wasn't my idea in the first place. And if I do, I want it to be my choice. It was a big thing. And I asked myself, well, why do people play music? And I decided to ask that big question and not be in any rush for the answer and just wait for the answer. And the first answer came when I was listening to a recording of a Vietnamese woman singing a lullaby to her baby. No instruments, just this beautiful voice in Vietnamese singing. And I got my first answer, which is love, comfort, lullaby, holding the baby. That's a really pretty nice reason to play music. Just that alone, right? And then other answers came. Celebration, because I used to live in a big group house in Cambridge with a lot of people. We used to do a lot of jamming together. They weren't trained musicians, but there was a lot of joy in just jamming and making music together. And then I studied South Indian violin with T.N. Krishnan, who is a master of Carnatic violin, South Indian. And he just recently passed away, but that was my first serious venture outside of Western music. Really, studying South Indian music. And he, at the time, he invited me to live with his family in South India, Madras. And and he would teach me, basically, in the very traditional Indian style. But I didn't. It wasn't the right thing for me. But I took away a lot of things from South Indian music, violin playing. It's very virtuosic. It's also it's devotional music. So that was another answer, that devotional aspect to music in some traditions. Like in Turkey, they have a Sufi tradition that's also devotional, and the music is played for ceremonies and in that context too. So there it is. But also I wanted to say that even though I started with the violin and I was playing classical violin, I heard growing up, going to my father's family and my mother's family and all my cousins and aunts and uncles growing up in New York, different music. For example, my father's family's from Syria, from Aleppo, Syria. And so every time we went to my grandparents' either house in Long Beach or in Brooklyn, an apartment in Brooklyn, there were 50 of us in this one-bedroom apartment, and everybody was speaking Arabic, or at least the older people, not us. And the food was Syrian, so it was so good, delicious. And there was always Arabic music, always, always, always. They had a stack of records, and it just was continuous playing of Kulthum, Muhammad Abdul Wahab, Fairuz, all of the favorites. And after we finished eating, the tables would be folded up, everything would be cleared, the music would be turned louder, and everybody would dance. And not everybody, the older people. We were too shy, and we said, we don't want to do that. I'm sorry I didn't, though. And then, so I heard, and there were live Arabic bands at all the weddings and bar mitzvahs. So we're Syrian Jewish. I heard the violin playing really differently, really with microtones, quarter tones, different sound, different way, different ornaments, and it was a whole different world of music. So I knew then, there's something different here. And then my mother's family, they're from the Ukraine. They're actually Russian Jewish, and when I visit them, my grandmother and my mother and her sisters would always sing Yiddish songs. And my mother also played piano, so we would play violin and piano klezmer music for the family. And it was from the Cayman Folio. I don't know if you're familiar, but that was a series of books that had collections of klezmer tunes. And they were actually used at weddings. They were like wedding books. They were for musicians to play this one and this one. So that was really different. And the styles of playing klezmer violin is really different from Arabic violin, but they have something in common that I found out much later, and also with the South Indian music, and also with every other kind of music I've been immersed in, which is that they have similar scales, or called maqams. Mm-hmm. It's based on a scale system, and you hear the same scales or modes or maqams in all these different traditions. And I think it's because the Ottoman, one reason, occupation for hundreds of years in all of these places, from North Africa, the Balkans, the Middle East, Turkey, Greece. And I think they left musically that mark, at least.
Would you show us one of these scales of maqam? Demonstrate on any instrument of your choosing.
My first choice right now is my violin. Mm-hmm. So, and some of the traditions have these maqams or scales with microtones, and some don't. So, for example, Nikris is really, really very familiar. It's everywhere. So, let's see. That's the bottom part. And then the top. Like minor. However, there's another related maqam that I just played earlier called Neveser, this is the Turkish maqam that I'm saying specifically. Hijaz. Okay, because I just started, let's see, how do I do it on the violin? So that's Neveser. So here's Nikris. I'll play for you a little bit of a Bulgarian tune called Gankino Horo, and it's in 11/8.
Mm,
So it's one two
please.
one two one two three one two one two.
Wow.
Yes.
For example, but that scale, that makam is everywhere. It's really everywhere. It's very prevalent in Romanian, Hungarian, Greek music, um, klezmer music, for sure.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
were able to find these threads through all the different traditions, and probably a big part of your ability to kind of dive into and digest and get the comfort within the different traditions is finding both the similarities and some of the subtleties and differences.
But that happened afterwards. I didn't know
Mm.
it. I didn't know it. Like for example, I after I played South Indian violin, I did a whole thing in New York, and I got a wonderful teacher, and it's classical music, to clear my. I needed to clear my technique. I needed to be at ease, complete, because I was so tight when I was growing
Mm.
up playing,
Mm-hmm.
and I found the perfect teacher. This man named Gerald Beale. He was a genius, really, of a teacher, and he taught me how to just play with ease. And during that time, I freelanced in New York, and I went and I got my master's at Manhattan School of Music and violin performance. So I was very, very classically immersed.
But
But
you'd come back to it, and at that point, were you like excited, reinvigorated in learning violin and the Western tradition?
yeah. Oh, in any tradition, because I had studied South Indian violin. I'd also taken some classes in West African music and dance, three different kinds of Indonesian gamelan. And
Mm.
I felt like, oh, this is my life. I got a vision, really. I will travel around the world. I will learn musical language, because then I got an introduction. Even when I was a little, I had an introduction, but it was kind of unconscious. But I had an introduction to how many different languages, musical languages there are in the world. And the violin is the most versatile instrument. No
Mm.
frets. It's light. You can carry it anywhere. So I decided I'm just going to spend the rest of my life learning, sitting at the feet of masters, honestly. And after all of that, I came across these Hungarian musicians who came to Boston, and I was glued to. They were at MIT. I was just watching the violinists with my mouth open, because there was this really cool ornament that I never heard before. Like, what can I play for you? Uh, uh. The vibrato trill.
Yeah.
And there are different ornaments as well, but that was like so interesting to me. So I just got deeply into Hungarian music, and I didn't play anything else for about
Mm.
5 years. And I went to Hungary every summer, and I just learned and learned. And I had a band of two friends of mine, and we went through so much repertoire, because to play the Hungarian, Transylvanian mostly repertoire, we played for a dance group or a dance
Mm.
class, I think, and then we were called to play for dances, and that was happening in Budapest as well. They had discovered it was a revival, actually in the mid '70s, a revival in Transylvania. They discovered the dance and the music, that it was untouched in Transylvania, and people were learning it, and they were learning all the different regional repertoire, and so were we. So it was amazing. I mean, and there's so many different styles. So here's another one. It's from Gimesh. Actually, there it is, Nikris. That's a whole other world, and you know the instrument, no chords in that music, no accompaniment chords, but there's this. Jason, you probably saw this in the halls of. It's a Gardone, and it's played basically with a stick. You hit and you. I can't do it because I'm not holding it properly, but it's you hit it and you snap pits, and that's my theory is that's where the Bartok pits came from.
Oh,
it's a snap pits.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because he was pretty immersed in folk music. I'm pretty sure he heard that instrument in his recordings or travels.
Wow.
Beth, tell us about your current violin. What is this? It's so beautiful sounding.
Thank you. It's a Voller. It's a German violin. It's actually the Voller brothers made violins in London, but they were German.
Yeah, copyists.
Yeah. And it's made in about 1850. It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's very clear. To me, it's very clear.
It's very woody. It's clearly it's like. Do you think it has a single voice, or is the voice the fact that you can pull out so many different voices from it?
I love that question. Actually, I think the second, because what fascinates me and has fueled my constant, really unwavering interest in all of this is here we have the same instrument, just like we have the same human bodies, right? But different languages come out of our mouths, right? Different languages come out of this instrument too. And so, then I've wanted to learn how the violin is played in different countries, but then I found out that, like when I went to Greece and I got into Greek music, you see the instruments on the end there, those are all Greek liras. They're all played on your lap with an underhand bow, like the German bass hold. And they also have one thing in common. They have raised strings, so you put your fingernails against the side of them.
Right.
Wow.
So I realized, oh my goodness, there's a whole other tradition of bowed strings in Greece, some of which have kind of died out and some haven't. Like in Crete, the lira is still a very, very prominent instrument there, whereas Macedonia and Thrace, not as much. I think the violin has taken over all over the world, and it's kind of an interesting analogy to other things, where certain things have taken over. In India, the violin is used. They've completely adapted it to their style, to their music. So, yeah.
It's interesting. I find it just a bit of a nerd out about the Baller brothers. They I just read this amazing article about from Florian Leonard, big violin expert, about sort of deducing this violin that came into his shop, who the actual maker was, and it wound up being a Baller brothers violin. But it's interesting that you play one because they're known for their accurate, very accurate, almost mysteriously accurate copies of the famous makers, Strad, Guarneri, and
mine is Guarneri.
Yeah,
I have a label, right?
And very often they would fool the big shops. They would think, oh, this must be an actual Guarneri because maybe they used a piece from an actual instrument, maybe the scroll or the ribs or the back, but then crafted everything else. And I find it very interesting that you're playing one of these instruments because you blend so many styles, though you are an expert in them singularly, the way that they kind of come together into who you are as a musician is very much kind of represented in your actual instrument itself, how they actually used all these techniques and maybe actual parts from these famous instruments to combine into this sound. It sounds like an amazing match to you and your violin.
I love that. I never knew that about Voller, and also maybe the fact that it's kind of it just fooled people about who it is kind of like what I do. Not really fooling them, but I'm being a different persona,
Right.
with my violin, and the Voller does a very good job with that.
Totally.
Yeah,
And you're moving
right.
through these languages effortlessly, and that's an amazing testament to not only your skill but the heart that you have for the music that you're playing.
Right, and also I just really, as I said, I've never done it kind of in a surface way, like when I played the Hungarian music. At one point, I was playing in a band with Mimi Rapson. That's how we met, with Hungarian music, and there was a thought of playing some Greek music and in a concert, and I said, absolutely not. I'm playing Hungarian music only. And then, of course, now, since then, I've been playing mostly Greek music in my life. But it just wasn't the right time. So funny. Timing is everything.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you
fantastic.
demonstrate some Greek music for us?
Sure. I'd love to. Oh, here, let me show you something. Well, first, this is kind of like a hybrid thing. Oh, it's over here. I have a bow with bells.
Oh, wow.
And this is actually meant for a Cretan lira, which is hanging on the wall now. So it's underhand, and it's like that. I found this again, and looking back, in Greece, the Crete sometimes uses bells on the bow. Carpathos, the island of Carpathos, also, and where else? India. So there's on the wall. Speaking of my wall, this instrument here. Can you see it?
Yes.
It's from Rajasthan, and it's called a Ravanhata, and it has a bunch of horsehair. Well, actually, this is nylon, sadly, but it goes out at an angle. That's what you put your fingers on. Yeah, just like the Egyptian rababa too has a bunch of horsehair that you're using as a string. So you're playing horsehair on horsehair, and both of them are similar in that they are cut out from a coconut, covered with fish skin. But this instrument, the one from Rajasthan, has a bow that also has bells.
Oh, yeah.
It's so interesting. Why? I'm so fascinated by how these things move from country to country with the bells on the bow in this case. And also in India, I think they also sometimes use like a bracelet of bells.
Yes.
We could do that playing violin that way. So I'm going to play something from Crete, although it's on the violin and it's pitched a little high, but I just wanted to give you the idea of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's wild.
The modern technique of chopping is meant to be rhythmic, but that's probably the most rhythmic bowing I've ever heard with the bells.
Yeah, right. And it really helps. And why? I don't even know why. I mean, maybe one day the lira player or violin player couldn't find somebody to accompany. Usually it's played, a lauto is accompanying the lira, or two or more plucked instruments. But I mean, it's like your own percussionist, right?
Right.
Let me play something. So that's from Crete. Here's something from another island. So this is the island of Andros. This is the first place I actually spent time when I started going to Greece. And yeah, Hijaz. Like a double Hijaz now. So 5 notes, 4 notes. And note the ornaments, because they're very characteristic of Greek music and Turkish. was talking about is when you descend, you play the note right above it. That. It's not this. Which is, it's not. It's this. And you know what's really interesting is I recently started playing some South Indian music again. And I found a piece that I learned from T.N. Krishnan in that raga, makam, except there's one note missing. As far as I can tell, it's missing this one. And the ornaments are the same, but the violin, when you play the violin in India, you sit cross-legged on the floor. You put your scroll by your ankle. So you're not holding your violin with the left hand. So it makes it easy to do these ornaments. But here's one. With one finger. Instead of same ornament, but played differently, right? And here's another one. And in Greece, is used like that too, but not with one finger. It's harder, a lot harder.
The attack changes so much about the intent of what you're playing, whether it's whether you're sliding, whether you're actually fingering those ornaments.
Yeah, actually, that probably has something to do with what the function of the piece is. For example, this is it's dance music.
Yeah.
And the other one is a song.
Yeah.
The South Indian thing.
And how much comes back to emulating singers at the from the origin? Is it most or yeah?
I would say that definitely. For example, I know that from Indian music, the violin imitates literally the singer. I mean, literally, and right afterwards. And I think in most traditions, everything comes from the voice. You know, whether it's obvious or not, I think that's true. I remember Arthur Rubinstein was, he was being interviewed by somebody, I forgot who, and he was asked, who is the pianist who influenced you the most when you were becoming, you know, a young pianist growing up? He said, yes, the singer so-and-so. His answer was, he didn't mention any pianists. He said he learned from this singer. He learned everything about how he played from this singer.
I think about that a lot too. I was just doing an interview and somebody, it's like I was like, I often don't consider myself a violinist. I'm a singer. Violin is just the instrument that is what my voice comes out, you know, and that's how it comes out. And I think that's something that resonates with a lot of people who love the violin is emulate the freedom to express yourself like a singer and to you know, and have all the variability and all the nuance and the colors, but also I think we also love the sound of the violin itself, right? But coming back to singing, I would be curious, do you sing in your head a lot of these melodies as you're doing it, or did you sing it before you learned it? Did that help you along the way? And I don't mean like performing singing. I mean just like as like a way to get your inner ear, your inner self around the music. Was singing a part of it for your journey?
I don't do it all the time, but I like when I teach by ear, to have people sing it and then play it.
Yep.
So because this is for the same reason. And I also, let's say I want to learn something by ear from memory, I just listen to it and I learn to sing it. Yeah, I think that comes first.
I do this exact same thing, even in jazz solos. I think it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. Connecting. Can I play one more instrument for you?
Please. Yes, please.
I mean, that's a funny thing to say, right? I have 10 instruments, but this is a violin. But one thing also that I discovered in playing is all the different tunings that all these traditions have. So this is one that's really special. I've tuned my upper two strings to a D octave. So
Wow, okay.
so here's the solution to playing octaves. It's so easy now. You just put your finger down on both strings.
Oh, and you have them. Oh, even they're both in the same notch on the bridge.
They're not quite, but I
Oh,
moved.
no?
I made another notch. Basically, they're halfway between the E and the A string. I made another notch. Is it half? No, it's
Did
not
you
half.
make this
Yeah, it is.
modification yourself, or did you
I did.
consult a luthier? Oh, you did. This
I
is
did
one
it
of those.
myself.
Do not try this at home.
I know. I did it. Well,
No,
this
yeah.
was not a very expensive violin. And I also made a notch here at the nut as well. So, and the reason is because I heard music from the 1920s, Greek music, Turkish music, Arabic music, and even klezmer music, where they use this tuning. And I tried to, honestly, to figure out how they did it. And just from listening to recordings, and I figured it out. So here's something from Syria, actually. This is a debki, and it's in sabah makam, which is, there's different ways to play sabah, but to get it in tune. It may not stay in tune. So, anyway. Sorry. Etc. And
Wow.
then there was
That's wild.
I know, and so then that was later, but then I discovered this too. That's ushak. Like minor, but the second is a little lower depending on where you're from. And then that's by a violin player named Dimitrios Sempsis, Greek violin player. This is from, again, the early 20s. He was a Greek violin player. But it's kind of a Greek-Turkish tradition. It's Merneko, it's called. And klezmer. And that goes on. But how interesting that they use it. So I met a violin player in Greece who knew that style. They called the blochordo, which means double string. This, but he was using an octave pedal. He wasn't doing what I did, which is I messed around with my strings, but it didn't sound the same. Honestly, I couldn't get the same octave. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's possible now.
What do you recommend for folks who are so curious about these different sounds, but what's like a good starting point? Is there one tradition that you find is kind of, none of them are easy, but like a good starting point for people who just want to like dip their toes in this, just to inform them of the different languages and get out of the box a little bit if they're coming from just classical? Is there one thing you could point them to?
I'd have to think about that. I don't really know. I mean, my journey took a lot of years.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's an entry point. I mean, well, if somebody is drawn to any tradition in particular, it might be good to start from that, because it's always great to, right? To start with something you're excited about or you heard or you're very inspired by, and then take some lessons. I think private lessons is probably the best way. Or go to Greece and, find a violin player and say, "Can you teach me some things?" I went to Andros, the island, because a friend of mine told me, a Greek friend of mine told me there was a violin player coming from an island who's going to play in Watertown at a dance. And the Andros Society brought this guy. And so he said, "Why don't you come and bring your violin and I'll introduce you to him at the break." And I did. And he wanted me to play. We played in the kitchen of the function hall. And he said, come to Greece, play with. I said, "Can I study with you?" He said, no. Come and play. Come and play with us. And I did. I played with his band every single night. We went from village to village on the island of Andros. And that's a great way to get, immersed in a tradition. Just go.
Yeah.
Right?
Live the tradition.
It's so important. You hear the language, you smell the air, you eat the food, you see the sea. That's it. We're talking about notes here and musical language, but it's part of, a whole gestalt.
It would be like, like I play jazz manouche. It'd be like if I had never traveled to France, and that would be like, okay, you haven't really experienced it. So it's the same kind of thing with these world traditions. Yeah, and I hopefully, as things open up, if you live in the hub like Boston or New York, you can seek these out. Like you said, an incredible Greek musician came and played and opened, like seeing it live and actually just doing it. And I think the fearlessness is important too, because we're all just humans. And what you realize, I think a lot of people are scared, like I can't do this style justice, so I'm not even gonna try it. Or they're scared because you said your friend from Greece, he said, "Just play with me. No, don't study with me. Just come play." And I think that scares a lot of people, is to just like jump in and experiment and open their ears, open their hearts to the style. But that's such an important thing, is to understand that you gotta dive in, and if you have the right attitude and you're there to learn and really immerse yourself, I think. And there we're all forever students, and if you have the right attitude and your ears and heart are open, I think you'll always be accepted with people around the world.
Always.
Yeah, like, they're probably excited that other people want to learn it and bring it further throughout the world, the style that they love and the tradition that they grew up with. So I think for people that if maybe they're in a classical box, in a way, and they just have to open themselves up and go hear it, go see it, and try it, experiment, and I think that's the way to do it.
I think you're right, and I think people are very flattered. Often, I got that a lot when I traveled. I went a lot to Greece, a lot to Turkey, and a lot to Hungary, and people always were kind of surprised. "Why are you interested in our music?"
Mm-hmm.
And then, "This is so exciting. We're so happy that you're here. You spent money, you took time, you came from America, and you're interested in our little old tradition." I had that experience I went to the island of Kythnos, and when I was playing the music of Kythnos, I had learned it for playing for dancing here, and this woman was so excited when she got to know me. She passed around to all her friends that their music was being taught in California, where I was teaching at Balkan Camp, and in Boston. That was like a big deal for her. So, it goes both ways. There's a lot of gratitude both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been my experience for sure.
And also remember, because of the pandemic, it's really made the world more accessible. So, you can study with people on Zoom all over the world, actually.
It's
So
very
that's kind
true.
of cool. Yeah.
For many of our guests, they have a clear idea in their mind, in their ear, and their heart about what sound they're after. And of course, the title of our series is The Search for the Sound. It seems to me that you are one of those special musicians that is always searching for that sound because there's so much more to discover. And looking at this trove of beautiful instruments behind you, I can only think that there must be 10 times that many more string instruments out there. And certainly your desire to explore and discover leads me to believe that you will forever search for the sound. What do you
Forever.
share that?
Yeah.
I mean, what's
Yeah, you're totally right. There's no end. I mean, I'm learning languages. I'm learning, and you know what? Like right now I'm actually studying. I'm taking classes online with a wonderful Bulgarian gadulka player. Gadulka is another bowed instrument that has sympathetic strings. You put your finger, you put your fingertip against the string. It's so hard. It's really hard instrument. Or in the on the top string, second, third, fourth fingers are against the fingernails or against the string. So it's really hard. But I'm so excited about learning it because again, the repertoire, the music is familiar, but it's unique to Bulgaria, and I'm so thrilled about it. But years ago, when I first met the South Indian violinist, I had this vision. Besides traveling all over the world to find my teachers and find the sounds, I had this image of a big palette of colors that I was going to spend the rest of my life filling up.
Hmm.
Right? And because every single musical language has different ornaments, different timbres, right? Different pitches, different scale systems, different melodies, all of that. And as I kept going, I collected. And then the idea was at some point I would start painting with those colors, my own music. And it would be a kind of a fusion of all of that. And honestly, I've done a little of it, but I haven't done it quite because I feel like I'm still learning the languages. It's so, anyway, that's my
Well,
thing. I'll do it.
oh, well, it's been absolutely a treat to talk with you, to learn. Every time I see you perform or get to hear you talk about the different traditions, I learn an insane amount, and it's just fantastic. I know all the people listening to this will just be thrilled to for what they're learning and what the possibilities are out there, and
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Possibilities. That's great. And someday we are going to play some Romanian music together.
I know we've been talking for so
We've been
long
talking.
about this, and we were almost about ready to do it, and then of course pandemic. But yes,
Pandemic. Yes.
I am still so down. I am also somebody who is forever learning. I think Ross is the
Yes.
same. We're students for life
That's it.
at all levels. So I am really excited to dig in and do some double fiddle or whatever. Yeah, we have some Romanian.
And Jason, I have my trumpet fiddle up there on the wall. You see
Oh
it?
yes,
Can you
yes.
see it? Yeah. It's so. We could do that too. You could play trumpet fiddle. I could play whatever. I have two actually. Oh man, that would be amazing.
Double trumpet fiddle. I love it.
We'll do it. That sounds great.
Well, awesome. Well,
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
This has been
I've loved
wonderful.
talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
Beth.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for asking me. And I look forward to seeing the other ones in your series too.
Yes, and we'll have to have you back as we go further down this road and tap into your knowledge about so many of these other instruments.
Yeah, right. There's a few dozen I haven't played for you. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Thank
kidding.
you so much.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.